Peterson with the Northwest Gas Association, and we're pleased to bring you all the way from Washington, D.C., Daniel Gage, president of the Transportation Project, to talk about their work around RNG. Um, I really love the Transport Project um, because it engages the entire value chain to get natural gas into engines, into transportation, from the engine manufacturers and vehicle manufacturers to the dealers, servicers and suppliers, the fuel suppliers, um, and even some developers that get CNG or RNG into the system. So they're really the premier natural gas transportation association in the country, and so I'm really happy that Dan's agreed to join us. And the Transport Project was previously known as NGV America. Um, they changed their name, and Dan's been with them since 2017. He's been captain of the ship since 2017 with them, and comes out of policy communications and public affairs. I'm not going to date him and tell you how long, but a long time. And so we're just happy to have him. So during I asked that all the microphones are muted, and if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll find time to interrupt Dan as he's going along to ask the question, and then and he'll go about a half hour, and then we'll hopefully we have a lively conversation too. So, and reminder, we are recording. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan.
Great. Let me just pull up my slides. Thank you, Scott. How's that working? Can you see that okay? I get it into a slideshow. Slideshow. Not now. Why, there it goes. I had everything stuck in the top. I couldn't see it. Okay, how's that? Can you see that okay?
Yeah, it's still in PowerPoint view, not a presentation, but I think you're good if you're comfortable with that.
Okay, as long as you can see him. Great. Thank you. Appreciate, Scott, that introduction. As Scott mentioned, Dan Gage with the Transport Project. He talked a little bit about who we are, what we do. We were established back in 1987. I think it was the fall of 87. Originally part of American Gas Association's Transportation Committee, and they spun that off into a separate 501c6. Today we have roughly 200 members. The unique part about us compared to some other like associations in town is, as Scott mentioned, we represent that whole value chain, right? So fleets and OEMs, engine makers, servicers, suppliers, fuel retailers, fuel producers, everyone in the natural gas space. Originally, we focused on what I like to call the 3 Ts: trash, trucks, transit. Today, some of our members are doing some really unique stuff in off-road, so rail, marine, and construction. Back in the late 80s, everyone was talking about how we were going to get Mideast oil, and you might recognize the guy in the far left picture and the far left, Boone Pickens. So it was really when Boone sort of became engaged in our organization in the industry that there was a real push for natural gas and as an on-road transportation. Obviously at the start, folks were thinking light duty or personal vehicles. Today, we mostly focus on commercial vehicles, although we do have members that are doing some really cool stuff in the light duty space, but they tend to be fleets and the like. We still do, just like, Northwest Gas, we still do advocacy both at the federal, state level. I noticed Sherry Marrow, who's our Director of State Government Affairs, is on. Thank you, Sherry. So, that's our primary work is advocacy. And you'll see by some of the slides, some of the things that we're tracking and how we're trying to be helpful to our members and to other stakeholder partners like NWGA in the industry. we also have a very aggressive and active technology and development committee that works on code, standards, safety, best practices. When there's an incident, we work with NHTSA to understand why. So a lot of that is self-policing, but we have, all the really smart engineer folks are engaged on that front. And then lastly, our third leg of the stool is just to provide a lot of credible data and promote the industry. So let me just give you a quick level set on where we are from a regulatory and market outlook perspective. And I know this slide is super busy. I shared all these with Judy to share with you. I'll just sort of go through this really quickly so you can see all of the different federal and state regulatory items that we are tracking and where they are. Of course, the dark blue on the left are all US EPA rules. The teal colored rules are California specific, although some of those rules have, as you know, moved into other states. And then the green rule, the indirect source rule, that's specific to South Coast Air Quality Management District in Southern California. But, the big thing for us on the federal front is what's going on actually right now with this EPA hearing on endangerment finding, right? The Obama administration had declared the endangerment finding back in December of 2009, which really set the stage for EPA to start regulating greenhouse gases. This new administration announced in March it was going to open it, and then very late July proposed a rescission rule for endangerment. And what that does is, obviously it's not a done deal yet, it's subject to final rule. We know there'll be multiple lawsuits, but that really sort of will take the bottom out of everything that the EPA has been doing, at least on greenhouse gases, including greenhouse gas phase 3. So that effectively ended on July 29th when that rule was repealed. But we'll see how that develops. In addition to that, on the criteria pollutant side, we're following the Clean Truck Initiative, which is a low NOx initiative that was finalized in December of 22. Originally that was proposed, the idea to do that in the first Trump administration. It didn't happen until Biden administration, and that set a standard of 35 milligrams that was set to start, milligrams of NOx, set to start on model year 2027. When they announced the endangerment finding, they said they were going to review that. They did not, when they revoked the endangerment finding, they did not revoke the Clean Truck Initiative that is still on the books, although some stakeholders in the transportation space, like ATA, have asked for a delayed start. So we'll see what happens with that. But as you know, the clean truck, advanced clean trucks, the low NOx omnibus, and the advanced clean cars, which is not all on here, we're all California specific. Those waivers were revoked on June 12th. That followed the rescission of a request from CARB to EPA for advanced clean fleets. That was withdrawn just before Biden left office. And so what that really does is this is the bottom. This is the foundation for all of the regulatory work that CARB's been doing on the heavy duty side. Clean Truck Partnership is part of that. You've probably seen some letters about that. Was in essence an agreement between the major OEMs and CARB that if these other items went away, they'd still follow it. And exactly what happened, they thought could happen, happened. Effectively, we view that that's been voided. There's no CARB response to date, but DOJ was involved, alleging that this was antitrust, that sent cease and desist, price fixing, think along those lines. The OEMs have sued CARB to get out of it, and a group of state AGs have all sued as well. So that's still a question, but the outlook is looking brighter, that we're not pushing for an immediate ALZEV future. Obviously, the governor and the state have responded with an executive order that we mean business. We're going to keep plowing ahead, but there's an awful lot of question where that is. So what that does is, I guess, just gives a little breathing room. And as we continue to engage with CARB and other states, you can see that there's not just been a delay, but perhaps, and we're hopeful that there'll be more of an embrace of a low NOx as part of that overall solution. As it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. This is a map just that Cherry tracks that just shows some of the other states that had initially tacked on to California's rulemaking, Section 177 type states. Many of those states, you can see by the check, have acted since then to either prohibit advanced clean trucks, to withdraw from the MOU, or in the case of Oregon and Washington, to at least repeal or there's a bill maybe to repeal it, but at the very least to delay those rules because it is seen as too fast, too soon. And a lot of this is all because of how folks are seeing the heavy duty market when it comes to electric vehicles. There's a lot of interest. Scalability is a huge problem. The recharging infrastructure still is not ready. It's costly. A lot of competition with data centers for availability of transmission capacity. And the business models for those large fleets that have tested electric vehicles, at least a Class 8 electric. And when I say EV heavy duty market, I really mean the big tractor trailer electric. Vehicle cost, availability, lots of are of concern, duty cycle limitations, and an ability that really have to purchase more trucks and hire more drivers, and all those costs factor in. I mentioned the electric, just sort of, this is not anecdotal, but it's it's not overly scientific, but the average depot that might have 50 Class 8 heavy duty trucks, if you were to electrify all those vehicles in fast charging, you need the energy equivalent of what's in the Empire State Building on any given day. So you can see sort of that challenge to roll out those advanced clean truck, advanced clean fleet type regulations. We also see some traction, some movement with our alternative fuel tax credit and RNG credit. That demand credit went away. We're hopeful to bring that back by the end of the year. It was instead replaced by an item in the IRA called 45Z, a clean fuel production credit, that instead of getting credited to the end user, the fleet, it's now going to the producer. That was one of the very few items that was saved in the One Big Beautiful Bill. It was actually, through our work and others, improved to advance and support RNG production, but it could provide upwards of more than $1. All depends what the guidance comes out that we're now trying to influence, but it could be more than $1 a gallon to the producer, that hopefully some of that would be shared for the end user. We also were able in that bill to extend or retain our alternative fuel vehicle property tax credit. That went up to $100,000 per item. Fuel dispenser and storage, that's a credit. That's a typo there. It is $100,000 per credit item. That was retained, but through OBA, it was reduced to June 30th of 2026. And then the clean hydrogen production tax credits in there too. So the problem is there's a lot of items, right? A lot of things that are available here for fleets. This is a slide that I stole from my friend Dave Schaller over at NACFE. We can just see all the different clean fuel options and how they all line up. But why do we think RNG, and why are we pushing an RNG fueled solution? Well, it's a proven product. There's a great emissions profile, and I'll update you on some of those numbers in just a second. Affordable, it's very affordable alternative. You've got available infrastructure, so that challenge is nil. And then it fits current business model. So let me just remind you about where we are today. These are just different applications, right? We've got school bus, transit bus, we've got light duty, medium, heavy duty, freight, construction. There is a certified natural gas option in all of these very varied opportunities right now. And unlike others, I think that's what sets us ahead. These are really the sweet spots for medium and heavy duty commercial fleets, right? We've got that heavy duty truck and cement. We've always done really well in refuse, and we continue to do so on the transit side. There's also some interesting, and we've got some members doing some really cool stuff in the medium duty. So think vocational, think stake trucks, think Class 6 box trucks. There are some options there. And the biggest market update since the last time I know it was with you guys was the launch of the Cummins new 15-liter natural gas engine. It joins this suite of Cummins engines that are all EPA and CARB certified. So currently there's a 6, 7, and 9, a 12, and a 15. all run solely on natural gas. The whole engine business is looking to be fuel agnostic and build these new platforms out. The X15N is really the new engine in Cummins' Hemi platform, which will someday be fuel agnostic, meaning in that case, you could run that on CNG, RNG, renewable natural gas, or potentially even hydrogen blends. And I think that 15 liter these other engines will likely be replaced on that line. So you'll have like a 10 and a 15 liter. But that X15N, as I said, is EPA and CARB 2024 compliant today without using any credits. And the unique part about it is it's not just a science project, right? This engine has been in use. There are roughly 60,000 units that have been sold and have been racking up mileage in China and all across Europe. And now this product is available here in the United States. So we're really excited about that. It opens up this part of the market that the 12 liter maybe just people struggled with a little bit. So, we did a lot of short haul, but now we've got line haul, sleeper, heavy duty, tandems. And on the West Coast, that 15 liter is meeting all the metrics for, going up really heavy scale. Emissions. So when we think of natural gas as a motor fuel, we've got to think of it, right, as criteria pollutants and carbon pollutants. We do great things on the criteria pollutant side, right? We are CARB certified at 50 milligrams. This 15 liter will be eventually be able to easily meet that new federal standard when that kicks into effect, whether it's in 2027 or shortly thereafter. But it's important because of clean air, and we continue to talk to folks about this here in Washington, right? Republicans might not be keen on regulating carbon, but they still are interested in clean air and clean water. And there's a lot of reasons for this, right? Last year, or actually earlier this year, in the American Lung Association State of the Air report, you've got, failing grades in huge portions of the US on things like ozone and criteria pollutants. So we still have interest in that. Through this slide in here, Energy Vision, which is a great group out of New York City, and Matt Tomick, its president in Seattle, issued this report earlier this year that just tried to put some of that, if we ditched old diesel and started running natural gas engines fueled by renewable natural gas, what does it look like in terms of healthcare costs and public health impact? It's a great study, and you can access that on energyvision.org. But I know everyone wants to talk, especially in the West Coast, about carbon. And so when we look at carbon, regular conventional natural gas gives you, whether you're running it as compressed or liquefied, it gives you a reduction in carbon. But the big growing interest in our space is the use of renewable natural gas from a variety of feedstocks. I'm sure everyone on the call is well versed in all those different options. But it's just waste that is digested. It is scrubbed and cleaned into biomethane and is put into the system and dispensed as vehicle fuel. So a pretty interesting process, but it takes that waste liability and makes it a green energy asset. And why is that so important? RNG has the same criteria pollutant profiles as conventional natural gas, but when we look at carbon, renewable natural gas can have a huge impact on carbon intensity. And these numbers are just from the California low carbon fuel standard. They just do a really good job, right, of tracking all of those pathways. If you pile up all the different pathways, all of the RNG that comes into that system and then is dispensed as motor fuel, the average carbon intensity last year for bio CNG, right? So this is there's a little bit of bio LNG, but taking bio LNG out of it, most on-road motor fuels, bio CNG. If you take that out and you look at it, it's a negative 194, meaning that fleets in California last year that were running natural gas were basically running a carbon negative outcome. 99% of all of all natural gas used in California last year was renewable natural gas. And here's why it's important, right? If you look at the fuel dispensed through LCFS by volume, RNG just makes up a little over 5.5%, 5.6% of all on-road alt fuels that are dispensed by volume. But it had almost a quarter of the emissions impact. right? So it's a really unique option. Nationally last year, 86% of all natural gas motor fuel dispensed into fleets was renewable. And that just continues to grow, as you can see, over the last 5 years. Now, what about adoption? We get that question a lot. With this new Cummins 15-liter engine, Cummins is estimating anywhere between 5 to 15% of market share over the next 10 years. And you can see how that high and low case might look in terms of market share of new truck sales. So where does that relate to fuel consumption? And we've got some new figures that we just did with the renewable fuel standard. Sherry and I got to work those into some slides, but you can see what that growth might look like. In the blue line is on the right-hand side. The blue line is natural gas vehicle growth just at 5%, orange is 10, gray is 15. So we are talking about a sizable amount of fuel that could be used if the 15-liter continues to see the sales growth that Cummins expects. Overall, carbon content, as I said, of motor fuel, natural gas motor fuel, is decreasing because it's renewable. We made an industry pledge, right? We represent most of the fuel dispensing, fuel retailers and dispensing companies. We made an industry pledge of being 80% by 2030. You can see last year at 86%. So we continue to get more and more interest from fleets. A lot of that, of course, is from corporate social responsibility, sustainability goals, ESG investor-led efforts. We saw a lot more of that a few years ago. But with or without those federal mandates or those types of investor-led pushes, we're still seeing fleets that transition to natural gas be real interested in RNG. And that's because it's affordable and they get a huge impact out of it. This is a chart we just developed. It's not a new concept, but it's been all updated. If you were a state, we did this for some state legislators. If you were a state that wanted to put $100 million into a clean truck pot, right? If you wanted to cover the entire cost of a natural gas truck or a battery electric truck, this is class 8, or you wanted to just cover the incremental cost, you can see on the left side how many trucks you'd get for the investment. And on the right side, that would be if it was just incremental costs. So the impact is that you're going to be able to buy more trucks, put more clean trucks on the road. If it's natural gas and you're just doing the full cost, or you're doing the full cost, you get about 6 times the greenhouse gas benefits and 2 times the NOx benefit than if you spent all that money in solely battery electric. If you're just doing incremental costs, which just means the cost over what a typical diesel purchase would be, and that's how most grant programs work, you'd have 12 times the impact on greenhouse gas and 3.5 times more impact on NOx if you push natural gas purchases. I threw this in because I just want you also to understand or be aware that we do have some members that are doing some things that provide like dual fuel options. This would be if you have existing technology and you wanted to put on something that would use natural gas and then could switch over to diesel or gasoline. We do have some dedicated type equipment manufacturers that do that, and it's a really quick way to lower your cost, your fuel cost, and improve your emissions footprint without scrubbing or completely replacing all of your vehicles at that time. Why does natural gas tend to be a little cheaper? I know this is really elementary, especially for most of you on the call, but if you look at just the energy equivalent commodity cost, and these are spot averages at the end of 2024, you can see there's a lot more energy in natural gas than there is in crude, and that relates to the cost at the dispenser. This is retail cost. If you look at the chart on the right, it's from the U.S. Department of Energy Alt Fuels Data Center, but the April average was 308 for CNG. For diesel, it was 364. The chart at the left just shows you how costs go up and down. The lowest, the bottom light green line that is pretty level and consistent is natural gas. And so, we, as a on-road motor fuel, we don't have all the spikes that the others do. And depending on what part of the country you're in, it could be anywhere from 50 cents to $1.50 a gallon cheaper than other traditional fuels. And that is without our 50 cent a gallon alternative fuel tax credit, which I mentioned before, expired at the end of last year, was replaced by 45Z, and we're hopeful to have that come back into that swing as well. I should also just mention clean fuel standards. You obviously in California, Oregon, and Washington have them. New Mexico added last year. It has yet to be to start. And Sherry works with other states and other coalition folks across the country to try and get some California fuel standard programs there too. Those on top of the RINs tend to bring down the cost of that fuel. Available infrastructure. We always could use more. Natural gas stations aren't visible like your Chevron or Exxon on the corner, but they are there, and there's roughly 1,600 public and private stations nationwide. Surprising fact is that growing more and more of them, even the public access stations, are dispensing 100% RNG. So that's good to see. It's a domestic fuel. If I have it, we should have a good chart with this item on the right that shows the pipelines, and so a lot of the stations tend to find where there's tend to fall where there's a big availability of natural gas and through the natural gas pipeline. But we have a good chart that overlays the routes and the big corridors of movement of freight, and those stations tend to match that as well. Lastly, I mentioned the business model, and I think it's really, really important to note that some of these fleets that have tried, and in California, the drayage fleets have been required to transition to zero emission. Some have tried hydrogen, most have tried electric, and they are making it work, but it is not a one-to-one replacement, meaning they can't just put take out one truck out of service and give that driver a new vehicle. They've had to have multiple vehicles with multiple drivers and have multiple times that they have to stop to have charging. So it is disruptive. Natural gas is not disruptive. And whether you do a time fill sort of overnight, you plug in that natural gas and it uses less compression, and it's a little more cost effective. So a lot of refuse or return to base fleets will do that time fill, or I'm sorry, they call it, a time fill. It happens overnight. But the fast fill experience, like if you went to a diesel pump, is in essence the same. It just depends on compression amounts and where that all sits. I want to mention this because we get this question a lot and say, well, natural gas doesn't have the range. This is just a sketch of Hexagon Agility's, one of their fuel systems. Most of those cabinets that you see behind a truck can handle up to 4 cylinders. You can also put a couple on the rail. So you can get a range of upwards of 1,200 miles. And so, battery electric, even though it's got some really interesting technology and they are starting to be on the road now for drayage operations, your mileage is only about 200 to 250. If you're looking at hydrogen, you're getting up to 400, although with the Nikola bankruptcy, that has put a lot of those trucks in cold storage. When we look at an RNG or CNG day cab, that's about 850, just the one cabinet's on the back, about 850 miles. And as I mentioned, now with the advent of the 15-liter and the availability of that in different chassis, meaning different brands, right? Peterbilt, Kenworth, and Freightliner right now, you could start seeing these in sleeper cabs that get you that 1,200-mile range, just like diesel does. And because of that, these are all large fleet members of ours that are utilizing natural gas, relying on natural gas, and see it as a terrific opportunity for the future. I want to just mention this. Obviously, QR code will be in the slide deck, but if you're working with fleets, this doc's a little bit dated on a couple of the charts because it was done at the end of last year, but it's still a really, really good short panel card that can show how fleets can save money, slash emissions, and deploy and refuel that clean technology right now without delay and without having to go through all kinds of hoops at the power company. And with that, let me stop sharing, and my contact information's in there as well in the deck that Judy shares. So please, if you have a question or you need a follow-up or would like to maybe team up with one of our members, just shoot me an email there, and I'm happy to make that connection.
So Dan, we have a question in the chat. Noting, by the way, thank you for that. That was great.
Sure.
Question, noting their support for the use of natural gas and biofuels, has the current administration, and in particular the new Secretary of Energy, Wright, taken a position on production and use of RNG, hoping that they would be strongly favorable?
Yeah, so AGA's Matt Agan here has a great presentation on what the regulatory outlook was last summer compared to this summer. It's really good if you ever get a chance to hear him. And it's eye-opening for those of us in the energy industry, because this has been almost a complete 180. And I fear a little bit that we're swinging right a little too far, so that it just means that if the administration were to change again, we swing that pendulum, right? We like to be that consistency. I think the beauty of that is that RNG can be that middle compromise, right? We are clean. It's taking a problem and creating something positive out of it. And I know that there are a lot of opponents that just want to completely eliminate anything that has to do with fossil fuels. And so, we're judged because we rely on the conventional natural gas, right? The pipeline system and the gas utility system. But, this is it's invested infrastructure. It's in the ground. It's available. And I don't see how we're seeing a lot of cracks here in DC with center left politicians that recognize that fact and see that maybe some of these policies have gone too far, too fast when it comes to complete zero emission or all electrification. I would say that Mr. Wright, given his background, right, it's that drill baby drill mentality. But we have had a lot of positive conversations with his team, folks at DOE. We've had some great conversations at EPA with Lee Zeldin, who was a pretty moderate a member from New York prior to stepping down to run for governor. It was unsuccessful, and now is at EPA. And I think they see the value of RNG. What I fear, to be honest with you, is that this 45Z and some other tax credits, right, that were saved in the One Big Beautiful bill, while I know folks wish that there were some more credits that were included in that, I fear a little bit of like this feeding frenzy, and that's that will, I think, tarnish a little bit of what we're trying to do here in Washington. Not throw out fossil fuels, but prepare for fossil fuels, the 2.0, the future of where we are with that type of technology. And I think RNG is a great, it's a great part of that narrative. We haven't seen the public embracing of RNG production. I think that's from Mr. Wright. I think that's primarily because their messaging has been if you've seen what's come out of the administration on solar and wind, that's primarily where his focus has been of late. And if it's to build up, it's been more build up on the nuclear side. But I think we'll get there. I know that was a long answer too. I think we'll get there, but yeah.
So with the the new 15-liter engine that's out there, you think, and that's not what's going to be used in garbage trucks and things like that, refuse trucks that are kind of the tip of the spear now for the fleets. What is that, the 10-liter engine you think that's going to be the primary?
Yeah, it will probably be 10-liter. You could see the 15. And remember, when you're thinking of the refuse space, you'll see the 10-liter, I think, Scott, in the recycling and the refuse collection vehicles. But then they move trash, right? And you might see a lot of that movement, and think that whole recycling industry. I'm sure folks on the West Coast are really familiar with Stericycle, right? that was a company just purchased by WM, and they will be putting their touch on that fleet over the years as they integrate the two companies together. But there's an example of moving, hauling waste from collection facilities where it's brought in from the vehicles to landfill. All of that will likely be done in the 15, but the expectation right now is yes, that 6.7 was sort of a bus. I don't see that school bus being a big option at the 6.7, and I think then the current 9 and the 12 will just sort of morph into the 10 liter option. Cummins was set to launch that Hemi 10 liter. I think it was next fall, but I believe I just heard that they were going to push that out, and that has nothing to do with our regulatory outlook, more to do with just vehicle purchases, truck purchases, and where the truck sales market is right now. Separate from tariffs are impacting supply chains and routes and movements and revenues. There's a little uncertainty there, but I think more importantly, it was meeting a lot of these regulatory conditions, and advanced clean fleet, that purchase requirement really messed up the truck sales market, and I think it hurt fleets that were normally investing on a schedule. Fleets had been sitting out the last year and not making those investments. We are hopeful that it'll pick up in Q3, Q4 of this year.
So I just came across an article yesterday about electric school bus company in Canada, I think is
Lion.
going under or declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah.
How,
and so why does it, so there's a good example, right? And I referenced this earlier, Scott, about, and I'm stepping on your question, I apologize, but I think I know where you're going. There's an example of America. America's a startup. We're full of startups. We love startups here. But the problem was with fleets is when you invest in a startup, you're not just investing, in a product that you're going to use now, you're going to use it for the life of that vehicle. And so clean school bus program was great, right? $5 billion. I mean, even Republicans could see the value of getting kids off dirty buses. But we spent so much of that money on electric. I'll make a plug for us that we were successful in getting some of that money fenced off so that it was at least available to propane and natural gas as well. And propane makes a lot of sense in this space, I should add. But the electric purchases, so there's a host of school districts all across the country that use federal taxpayer dollars to go out and buy electric school buses. And now the school bus manufacturer, it went bankrupt. Yes, its assets have been purchased, but the new owners have said they're not going to abide by the warranty. That doesn't really work for most school districts, right? So I'll use this as another example, and it's not to throw stones at Nikola, but we have a member in the drayage space that was doing that made investments. It does a lot of investments in natural gas, and they do diesel, but they have natural gas. They made some big purchases in Nikola. And he loved the trucks. The trucks were working fine for him. But with Nikola going out of business, it voided his fuel contract. So, the truck was still working fine. He had some concerns about what happens about parts and when it doesn't work fine. But the issue was he was fueling those vehicles with $5 a kilogram hydrogen. And then when Nikola went bankrupt, now he's got to pay retail. Hydrogen's like $36 a kilogram. That just doesn't pencil out. So now those trucks are parked. And the beauty about natural gas is you've got this product that's been tested, it's proven, and it's done by a major industry player, right? It's being offered by Peterbilt, and for the chassis, Peterbilt and PACCAR, Kenworth, Daimler, Volvo obviously runs a lot of natural gas. It hasn't committed quite yet what it wants to do on the 15 liter. I suspect more it's because they're thinking they might want to bring their own engine over from Europe. But the main engine maker is Cummins, and so you've got an engine that someone will stand by for and is not going away, and that's important when you're spending millions of dollars on new technology.
Yeah, it's always killed me that we have this off the shelf solution that and it's not just the fuel savings, it's not just the environmental benefits, but uh, they're quieter. So like a garbage truck and a school bus and a transit bus make it makes city downtowns and neighborhoods quieter immediately. And you save money and do all those things at this, at the same time.
Well, it does check all the boxes for sure. And I see you had someone in the chat mention that the issue with Volvo and the next gen truck here is a chassis issue, and that's correct. It's sizing. But I do think, Volvo has entered into a joint venture with Westport Fuel Systems for a company called Sospera. And so they're doing some really cool stuff with what they did with HPDI in Europe, but also trying to develop sort of a gaseous engine that is fuel agnostic. So it could take potentially, Westport's doing some cool stuff where you could have a Westport engine on a vehicle that could be, 20% hydrogen and the rest natural gas, or 15% hydrogen and the rest natural gas. So there's a lot of development out there. It's not ready yet for prime time. It's being tested, and we just don't know what the certifications are going to be just quite yet. So
Any other, we won't just keep people here for no good reason. Is there any other questions out there? You want to drop in the chat really quick? Um, do you have, Dan, do you have, what's your prognostication of the next year for natural gas transport fuel?
yeah, so we think we're gonna again, there's some things that are beyond our control that are just happening in the truck market, in the freight movement market, that is unfortunate. And yes, some of it relates to tariffs, some of it relates to revenues, right? It's a really high volume, low margin space. I think fleets can get a little skittish sometimes based on the market. We'd like to see that pick up. I hope that picks up. Cummins continues to express confidence in that 5, 10, 15, over time growth. So we're happy about that. I think on the regulatory side, Scott, there's this concern over what happens if the federal government pushes out the NOx rulemaking, meaning maybe keeps that 35, but instead of having it go into effect for model year 2027, they push it to 2031, as ATA and some others have asked for. What does that do to market? We actually think, to be honest, that might help spur the market on the West Coast, because the California Truck Partnership Agreement with those OEMs was to maintain that 50 milligram, and the Cummins product right now meets that certification. And so the thinking is that it might make it, if the federal government decided to move on that or delay it, that it might encourage California even more so to embrace natural gas, to embrace that renewable natural gas low NOx solution as part of the bigger picture. So I think we're making some headway. Folks at CARB are smart, right? I think the CARB board is asking board members are asking some really serious questions, and they see a need to do something now, and we're hopeful that that RNG will be part of that. And yeah, just keep plugging away.
Yeah, exactly. That's the story of the industry since Stephen Pickens, right? Just keep plugging away.
Yeah, and the big players continue to invest. I mean, that's the good thing, right? The big fleets. WM will be one of the largest, is probably the largest natural gas fleet in North America, followed closely by UPS, and UPS is loving the 15 liter. If one thing I'll put on your radar screen too, if folks are familiar with the North American Council on Freight Efficiency, NACFE. They do, a run on less experiment project sort of every 18 months to 2 years. They're currently in the middle of that. We've got 13 fleets that will be tested all at the same time, different run cycles, duty cycles, runs, applications. That starts here in a couple of weeks. There will be 3 natural gas fleets in that study. Wegmans Food Market, a freight hauler in Canada, and then I think it's UPS again. I might be wrong. But those profiles are up on the NACFE website, and September 8th, you'll be able to go on and see the data coming in real time from battery electric. I think it's battery electric, fuel cell, hydrogen. I think they've got biodiesel this year and renewable natural gas. And we're pretty confident, Scott, that when that comes back, people are going to see, how renewable natural gas performs from a torque, duty cycle, right, cost, emissions profile, and we're excited about what that NACFE run on less session will look like this year.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Dan, for
Welcome.
taking the time. And I don't know, Judy, do you want to